Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 54 of the Ad Nauseam podcast. My name is Dr. Jeff Winkle, and I am here in the vomitorium with my good friend and co-host, Dr. David Noe. How you doing, Dave, tonight?
I'm so glad you asked, Jeff. I'm doing well.
How do you like this cool late summer, early fall weather?
It's beautiful.
Isn't it nice?
Yes, walking over here this evening to the vomitorium, I could feel the crispness in the air. Mm-hmm. There's a hint of autumn on its way.
Yes.
And those of you who live in places with, multiple seasons, we count 4 at this point. It's just so nice to see them change. Mm-hmm. The leaves fall. Now, the days grow short.
They do, yeah.
But we've got Thanksgiving to look forward to. I think we have a Thanksgiving-themed quote really near the end of the episode, if I'm not mistaken.
Today?
You don't remember?
I don't remember,
You
no.
didn't read the script?
I read the script, but I only
You wrote most of it.
So we have a quote that's going to look forward to Thanksgiving.
Kind of,
okay,
yeah.
All right.
But what are we doing tonight?
Tonight,
Did I ask how you are?
You didn't.
I don't usually,
No,
but
you
let's
don't.
do something different this evening.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm feeling great.
Uh-huh.
I mean, like you, I'm loving this weather. Like, walking into the vomitorium, we looked up in the clear sky, seeing all kinds of constellations twinkling up there. That smell of that sweet decay of the
sweet decay?
The sweet decay of the. Is
that your cologne or?
That would make a nice.
That's a good name for a cologne, isn't it?
Sweet decay.
Sweet decay.
No, the leaves, as they call
Okay.
it. You get a hint of that on the air.
Some must.
Yes, exactly.
That is very nice.
So I love fall. It tends to be short, and it's a hit or miss around here. But when fall is glorious, there's nothing like it.
You're right.
Yep.
What about the hayride?
We're talking about hay rides. I don't like hay rides.
No?
No.
It's not a hayridey night?
No, tonight's a night for a bonfire, for some
Cider?
maybe some pumpkin spice donut
That'd be
holes
really
or something
nice.
like that. But I was never a fan of the hay ride. Never kind of got that. Let's move slowly in a wagon with scratchy straw.
Lurch around.
Maybe
get some chaff down your back.
Exactly. Lots of chafing, discomfort. But maybe back in junior high, the point was to, kind of awkwardly flirt with girls and vice versa.
Yeah, be close to a member of the opposite sex without any pressure, kind of.
Exactly right. Yeah, but never was a big fan of the hayride.
You don't think we could get an episode out of that, do you?
How would we work that into the classical
I don't
theme?
know. We've been talking about the ad nauseum trip to Greece.
Yes.
Right? Planning that, hoping to get that going for next May, still in the works. We could do something preliminary, like a get-to-know-you event, like a trip to Greece bonding event.
Like we pile onto a
Stack some lobes, maybe along, the green and red book. Stack some lobes along one side. And just all lurch around together.
These tiny books flying off into the woods as we go around a turn. Yeah,
team building.
Exactly right. That would be memorable.
Yeah,
I'd be up for that.
People want things that are memorable.
So
don't
a pre-trip hayride, just to break the ice.
Yes, exactly.
I like it.
So maybe we could even make a kind of an offer. You sign up to go on the Ad Nauseam Greece tour next May. You get a free hayride.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah,
man. We're gonna get people.
You think so?
People flocking into this. Yeah.
Given my rural agricultural background, I have connections.
You do. You could set us up with like premium hayride.
I know people with hay. Yeah, and they're not going to bail on me. I know.
Oh man. So I felt like this whole thing was a setup for that moment.
No. Well, we better get on to some actual classics.
Exactly. So let's get to the shout out this evening. So the shout out this evening goes to one William Frost. Yes, a frequent listener to the podcast. He tells us he received a BA in classical languages from Marquette University fairly recently, just a couple of years ago. He is currently working on an MA in ancient Greek at Colorado University, Boulder.
Right.
And his interests are wide and varied, but he's particularly fond of all things ancient Greek and later Latin, and especially Renaissance and early modern period.
That is very broad.
Very broad, yeah.
Now, given the time of year and the season we've been talking about, this wouldn't be Jack's brother, would it?
Jack Frost? I'm not exactly sure who William Bill is related to.
If he has any fraternal relation by that name.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know.
We got to deal with a few, so I guess we should say thank you, William, for being a faithful listener. He's also sent in some wonderful suggestions, I'd like to say.
He has.
He's been listening quite a while, picked himself up a sticker, actually.
Excellent.
Showing that he's taking in the classics.
And keeping them down.
That's right.
Yeah, so I would say super fan status.
Oh, sure. Okay, do we have levels yet?
Well, that's coming.
That's coming.
Yeah.
Everything's levels.
It's in committee right now. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
We're getting a lot of good listener feedback. I'd like to mention just a little bit more here. You remember, I don't know how long ago it was, but we were talking about what we should be called. Should we be called popularizers?
Oh, right.
This was a Victor Davis Hanson bit we spoke of. Popularizers or vulgarizers, and I think VDH said he likes extenders.
Extenders.
Should be an extender. We decided.
Yeah, that's no good.
No, that sounds like a kind of way to keep your pants up.
Exactly right. Exactly. Every year my pants need another extender. Right. But I mean, we were saying that we agreed with Hanson that where the classics, if they're going to thrive and survive, it's going to be with the popularizers.
Someone has to work to make them accessible.
Exactly. Right. That's what we're trying to do here.
We're trying.
But we need a better term.
And so one of our other loyal fans, loyal listener, former student, I can never pronounce his last name. The first name is Michael.
Yeah. I think it's Krog.
Krog?
Yeah, I think it's Krog. I think that you get that G in there. It's not just
There's an
Krog.
H on the end.
There is an H. You leave that alone. It's
All
Krog.
right.
Yeah.
And he says, you should be called ambigoners.
No, that I like.
I like it too.
It's a Simpsons reference.
It is. It's from the episode called Lisa the Iconoclast. So I did a little bit of research, right?
Yeah.
I recognized of course, the reference right away, but the research I wasn't sure. In this particular episode, Lisa finds out that the founder of Springfield, a man named Jebediah Springfield, turned out to be kind of a fraud.
Right.
But his catchphrase is, "A noble spirit embiggens the smallest man." So that's really what we're about here.
We are embiggeners.
We're trying to embiggen people's approach to the classics.
Yeah, that's good. I think we'll stick with that for now. It's way better than what was it?
Extender.
I was going to say widener. That's even worse.
Broadener,
and all of those. No, distasteful.
No,
But
okay.
embiggeners, I like it.
I like it. And we got some other suggestions too. We ever going to get to Lucretius? I don't know.
We'll get there.
All right. A gentleman named Mark Muth, who's listening to us out in the Baltimore area, and he's gotten his own shout out, but he was saying that he really enjoyed the Lucretius episodes. He's looking forward to the fourth. And he said, here's some suggested titles, other titles you might want to use.
Okay, what do we got?
He said, The Answer Key.
The Answer Key?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's good. Or maybe All the Answers.
All the Answers.
Yes. As alternative titles, we've done things like What the Cat Dragged In was one of them. Also, as replacements for the really exciting On the Nature of Things.
Yeah. Boring.
What were some of the others?
The ones that we...
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yep.
Something by Seuss.
The Places You'll Go?
No, that wasn't.
That wasn't
Hop
it.
on Pop, I think. But he said The Answer Key or All the Answers.
Okay.
And then another gentleman that we both know, he's going to get his shout out later, Dan. We'll leave his last name till later.
Yes.
He said we had a near miss with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
A near miss.
Yeah, he said we should have gone with another Douglas Adams title, which is Life, the Universe, and Everything.
Oh, right.
I don't know anything about Adams, but that's a good title.
Excellent. Though.
Yeah.
Another one of his books from the same series has the best title of all, though I don't think it works here. So Long and Thanks for All the Fish.
So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. That's just absurdism.
It is
isn't
absurdism. Yeah, there's a lot of that throughout his novels.
Is it funny, like Stephen Wright kind of absurdism?
I don't know if Wright's the best corollary, but it's the humor is absurdist, and it's one of those things where you either love it or you just scratch your head.
Wright is one of the funniest comedians.
I agree.
I was thinking about one of his gags on the way over.
Oh, really?
Yeah, instead of I think this is Stephen Wright. Maybe it's Jack Handy, but instead of a trap door, how about a trap window? And if you lean over too far, you fall out. Wait, that's a real window. You've heard that one, haven't you?
I haven't. That's definitely Stephen Wright.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we better get into the content here.
Yes, we're a little bit overdue.
Yes, maybe too much light, not enough erudite.
Well, let's get down to some erudition.
Right.
Dave, will you tackle the opening quote?
Yes, I can do that. This is not our erudition. This is the brilliance of Jean Biagio Conte from his work Latin Literature, page 170. Lucretius shows that he possesses a wide knowledge of Greek literature as evidenced by the echoes of Homer, Plato, Aeschylus, the picture of Iphigenia, and Euripides. The whole description of the plague at Athens in Book 6 is based, of course, on the Thucydidean account. We're going to talk about that. Nor are signs lacking of familiarity with the sophisticated Hellenistic poets like Callimachus and Antipater. But the most distinctive feature of Lucretian style is concreteness of expression, plainness and liveliness of description, the visible, perceptible quality of the things discussed, the corporeality of the imaginary. These features of the presentation are, as the poet himself several times declares, effects almost entailed by the lack of a pre-existing abstract language for expressing ideas and giving philosophical form to his discourse. Paradoxically, the expression, as if compensating for that poverty, derives from this an advantage. It comes alive to fill the verbal vacuums by recourse to a vast range of explanatory images and examples. The result is a severe style capable of harshness and elegance, disposed to emotion and wonder, but also to prophetic invective, yet always grandiose, without ever losing itself in pomposity and empty magniloquence.
Wow, that's some purple prose there.
It is.
From GB.
It is, as translated by Sodolo, right? This was written in Italian first, so...
Right, of course.
But tremendous admiration for Lucretius' style, an admiration I share. It's good poetry. It underlines or highlights the theme, once again, that Lucretius is going to line the rim of the cup with honey so that this strong medicine of don't fear death and don't fear the gods, because religion is bunk. That medicine can go down easier.
Right, exactly. As I was looking over the stuff for today's episode, it struck me that Conti says that without ever losing itself in pomposity. I think he teeters.
You don't necessarily agree with that? I don't.
He teeters on the edge, but what I see it not so much pomposity, but it's so clear to me that Lucretius is reveling in the fact that he's maybe not necessarily saying things that nobody has said before, but he's saying them in a way that nobody's done before.
Right.
And he's having a great time.
Yes, I think it occurs to me just now that Lucretius, and I'm sure it has occurred to some better scholar before, but Lucretius is a nice counterpoint to Ovid, because Lucretius is proud, it seems, of his innovation, his ingenuity. I'm the first one to channel Epicurus to the Romans, and he's my hero, but I'm doing something important too, because you've all been kind of lost. So even though he's tearing down the organized religion of his day, he has a real religious fervor and zeal in doing it. Right. Which is genuine and authentic, but a little bit ironic. Whereas Ovid, you read a lot of Ovid, brilliant poet, but you would be hard-pressed to say he has any conviction. Right, yeah. Whatsoever.
That's really well said, right? I mean, it would be so nice to have something else by Lucretius that we could read this against.
Yes.
We have more from Ovid. We have a better sense of kind of, his breadth as a poet.
Yes. The only times I think that I have been able to develop true compassion for Ovid is when he's talking about himself.
His sad letters from exile.
Yes, his Tristia, or his things from Pontus.
Yeah.
Then there's true emotion there, but when he's talking about other people, it's really just all at their expense. And so maybe there's a point of contact with Lucretius in that. It doesn't seem, neither of them seem like very compassionate individuals.
No.
Honestly.
No. I got the sense too from reading this stuff for today that this question I keep coming back to is like, who is this for? And some of it is almost too clever by half. I mean, is he just writing for his literary circle? He's writing to entertain the kind of the small group of elite individuals, and this isn't a conversion text for the masses.
Well, I think that's true, but I don't believe he's writing only for his contemporaries. It's not a conversion text for the masses. It's for a particular kind of person who can be initiated into this special wisdom.
Okay.
But I think he means it, for posterity.
Right.
Just like Thucydides ends his history with, I've created something aesae for the ages.
Right.
It's clear Lucretius believes he's done that. Now, whether his missionary zeal has led him to believe that anyone will really embrace his ideas, that's not clear to me.
Yeah, nor I. But he's clearly just having a blast with this kind of theory of everything.
Right.
It's astounding how much he crams in these last books. I mean, this theory of the swerving and curving and clashing atoms explains everything.
Right.
And so it's explains the planets, it explains romance. It explains plague, disease, everything. Yeah. So I just think he's having I don't know. I was wondering, does he have his tongue in his cheek at any point? But it's hard to see that when he's lifting up Epicurus himself as almost as a godlike figure.
Right. Better than Hercules, better than Bacchus, better than Ceres.
Better than Bacchus wouldn't be a bad title for this episode. Yeah.
Good title for a band.
Better than Bacchus. Well, you have Better Than Ezra.
Never heard of them.
Oh, really? Okay. You've probably heard a couple of their songs.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Not with that name. Wash my ears out.
Oh, man. Judging books by covers.
You betcha.
Okay, I hear you.
All right, Jeff, so as we get started, we're looking at book 4, and you're going to read us some lovely hexameters. Is that right?
I am. This is from, not right at the beginning of the book, but a few lines in.
All right.
Sed quoniam docui cuncta rexordia rerum, qualia sint et quam variis distantia formis, spante sua voletent aeterno percite motu, quoque modu possit res ex his quaeque creari, nunc agarin cipiam tibi quod vehementer ad has res, attinit esse aquam rerum simulacra vocamus, quae quasi membrae vel cortex nomini tandast.
Very nice. Lovely stuff.
Yes.
You enjoying that poetry?
I do. It's been so long since I've read it or taught it, so I love coming back to that. It's
spending some time with an old friend.
It is.
It's great stuff. So you were saying to me last week that as I was reading some of the Latin during the episode, my mood seemed to improve.
Yes. Yeah.
The same for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see that when and I hear that when you read, it's something comes over you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's musical
beautiful stuff. It's fun.
Very nicely done.
Thank you.
So shall I read a little bit of a translation here?
Yes.
Okay, so this is from the Englert translation. Another one of the texts that Hackett, I know the ads come later, but another one of the texts that Hackett loaned us for this episode. So this is a verse translation, unlike the prose translation from Smith that we've been reading. So here it goes. But since I have shown of what sort are the beginnings of all things, and how differing in their various shapes, they fly around on their own, stirred up by eternal motion, and how from them all things are able to be created. Now I will begin to treat for you what closely relates to these things, that there exist what we call likenesses of things, which must be termed, so to speak, films or bark, because the image bears an appearance and shape like that thing, whatever it is, from the body of which it is said to be shed and wander forth.
It strikes me that, I mean, Lucretius, this works pretty well. It reminds me of a lecture.
Okay.
Where you lay out some material and then you stop and you kind of briefly summarize before going on to the next bit.
Spoken like an experienced teacher.
Yeah, so he's saying, this is what I've shown you.
Right.
This is what I've already proved.
Right.
And now we're going to take it a little bit further.
Yes.
Yeah.
So go back and look at slide 7.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
The reference point. Now here on slide 11, let's extend the argument a little bit further.
Right. So here, we talked last week about the clashing of atoms producing everything that you see in the material world
as they fall through the void.
Right. And now he's going to talk about, this reminds me of your cereal box metaphor from last time, the sloughing off of things already made, producing yet more things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that case?
What?
When you get to the bottom of the bag, do you pour out all the little crumbled atoms and slurp those down in the bowl, or do you just toss them out?
That grosses me out.
Really?
Yeah, exactly right. Like, I please tell me you're not one of those people who, like, when you're done with your cereal, you like drink the milk from the bowl. Oh, that's horrifying. Horrifying. It gives me the heebies just thinking about it.
Why?
I don't know. It's just so disgusting to me for some reason. So I associate the dandruff at the bottom of the bag with that. So I can't deal with it.
It's a good image, though, of the atoms, I think.
It is.
I don't mean to be self-congratulatory, but your positive response to it caused me to think about it throughout the week a little bit.
I thought about it a lot this week, too.
Mostly at breakfast.
Every time I pulled down the frosted mini wheats, oh, man. This is very Lucretian.
It's funny that I was eating frosted mini wheats this week, too.
It's Kismet. Oh, my gosh.
You're thinking of Kashi, aren't you?
Kashi?
What's Kismet?
Kismet is just like, it's a strange, wonderful coincidence.
Serendipitous. But you're not the one who takes all the fluff at the bottom and slurps it down?
No.
What do you do with it?
I toss it out. It goes out with the rest of the garbage where it belongs.
So the atoms fall through the bag. They collect at the bottom after they smash together. But they're falling through the void, the vacuum, right?
Yep.
And there is no fixed bottom to the universe.
Right.
So they just keep falling forever.
Keep falling forever.
Right.
And coming together, breaking apart. And I mean, Lucretius is setting up saying that, not only does this explain things like rocks and trees and whatever you see and touch, but things that you don't see.
Yes.
Yeah. Dream, or things that, you don't see in waking life, a dream.
Yeah, things that are not visible but are material.
Yes.
That's the key.
Right. So he would have a problem with describing a dream as being immaterial. No. All things are material. They can be explained by the same process.
Right. And, of course, the reductionist view of the human mind, every emotion, every thought, every joke, every impulse can be reduced to a chemical interaction, is very consonant in some ways with the Lucretian worldview.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
In some sense, his view of the world has become regnant.
Yeah.
It's won the day, for sure.
It's very much a materialist, secular, humanist way of viewing all of human and earthly life. Yeah.
And in this particular passage, he's talking about the simulacra.
Yeah.
So this is where he's talking about the likenesses of things. This is the Latin term simulacrum, the singular, simulacra, the plural. And it's interesting, he describes it like a film or a bark. So everything that exists is a material thing, no immaterial things. And they all give off a kind of a film, or they slough off parts of their atomic structure, I guess.
Yeah.
And then these flow throughout the whole world. And he explains the senses this way, the sense of sight. He anticipates in an amazing way. I was looking for this article. I wasn't able to find it. It's on JSTOR somewhere. It was an article written by one of my grad school professors, a man, to whom I've paid homage several times, Jack Holtzmark. He wrote a very penetrating analysis of the Lucretian view of the sense of smell. And he basically demonstrates, because he had interest in science and things, Holtzmark did, that Lucretius got very close to a contemporary explanation of olfaction.
Oh, yeah.
You smell because little tiny molecules of shredded frosted mini wheats, they work their way out of the bowl up into your nose, and they interact with the nose atoms, and there's a kind of a bond formed.
Yeah.
And apparently Lucretius anticipated precisely, or almost precisely, how smell works.
It's really striking.
And it's through these simulacra.
Yeah, so much wafting going on in these books.
I was expecting at least a chuckle when I was talking about the frosted mini wheats going up your nose, but this is why you don't slurp, I guess.
No, exactly. It's giving me the shivers again.
All right.
We got to move past that.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, he's very close to even a germ theory.
Right.
He anticipates all of this stuff that doesn't really kind of come together until 2,000 years later.
Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. So he was onto these things. But I was also intrigued by this idea that he says, films are bark because the image bears an appearance and shape like that thing, whatever it is, from the body of which it is said to be shed and wander forth. So these things that are sloughing off still kind of carry an aspect of the thing that they sloughed off from.
Yeah, the atomic shape, something like that.
Which is, in some ways, a kind of a Darwinian view. A species evolved. It's different, but it's still like what it came from. And so
he's anticipating a lot
of stuff that's on tap right now.
Right, absolutely. And do you think that maybe he's like Plato? I see you wanted to talk about this.
Well, that was we talked a little bit about what relationship does his ideas have to things like Plato's idea of the forms.
Right.
And this passage again brought me back to this idea that the material world that we see around us is a kind of a through a glass darkly of some perfect form out there. So that struck me as that the material sloughing off another object, it bears a likeness to the previous object. It's kind of he's taking the concept of the forms, but he's completely secularizing it and bringing it down to earth. So there's no need for a kind of idealized immaterial perfection.
Right. There is no immaterial.
Right. And so, he seems to be kind of using the same kind of idea and language, but he's saying, but it's really like this. So I don't know. It just struck me in that way.
What about dreams and images?
Yeah, let's just read from the man himself.
Okay.
This comes from the Smith translation, which we've been using a lot as well. Shall I read?
Please.
Okay. Images are sort of membranes stripped from the surfaces of objects and float this way and that through the air. It is these that visit us when we are awake or asleep, and terrify our minds each time we see the weird forms and phantoms of people bereft of the light of life. visions that often make us start from our heavy slumber and tremble with terror. We must not imagine that spirits escape from Acheron, or that the shades of the dead flit among the living, or that any part of us can survive after death. When both the body and the substance of the soul have been destroyed and dissolved into their respective elements, I contend then that things emit filmy forms and images from their surfaces, and the proofs that follow will enable even the dullest wit to understand that I am right.
Well, we'll see about that.
Yeah. There's that pomposity there.
Yeah.
Like, I can explain this to the biggest rube out there.
It's a prophetic invective,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So here, even dreams are material, and they're just Ghosts.
We can't imagine that they're really people because those soul atoms have dissolved long ago. So what explains them? I guess it's the things that they emit, the forms and images from their surfaces when they were living. These things are still floating around.
But they have no. There's nothing human or alive about it.
It's like a snake sloughing off its skin.
Right. I think he even uses that example later on, or he talks about cicadas doing the same kind of thing. That's what you're really seeing.
Do you remember seeing those as a kid, clung to the tree here in West Michigan?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we call it a June bug. I call it a June bug. Maybe that's a different creature, but that was an eerie experience as a child.
Exactly.
You think, it's an insect. No, it's a clear or at least translucent shell of a former insect.
Still clinging to the tree.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was odd and creepy. I still find it odd and creepy.
So what would Lucretius make of that?
Well, he would say this is exactly what I'm talking about. So think of a dream, a phantom visiting you in your sleep, as the shell of a cicada. It resembles its previous form, but it's also different. It's also, I would explain maybe a bit of its oddness and eeriness, perhaps. But it
says in a spooky voice, "Drink the cereal."
Right on. But yeah, he'd say that the idea that these are coming from. He mentions don't imagine they're coming from Acheron. This idea that dreams come from the underworld, which was an ancient poetic idea. They're just being sloughed off like a snake skin. That's what you're seeing. That's what you're encountering.
But how does he explain phantasms, mythic creatures, the centaur, the hippogriff?
Yeah, he comes back to his key theory. It's again things smashing into each other and making oddities, as it were. I thought this was really interesting. You want to read the Smith translation there?
Right. Now then, listen and learn while I explain briefly the nature and source of the objects that enter the mind and stir it to thought. My first point is that countless subtle images of things roam about in countless ways in all directions on every side. That's fairly comprehensive. When these meet in the air, they easily become interlinked like cobwebs or gold leaf. They are far finer in texture than the images that occupy our eyes and provoke sight. Since they pass through the interstices of the body, stir the subtle substance of the mind within, and so provoke its sensation. In this way we see centaurs, the forms of Scyllas, the faces of Cerberian hounds, and the specters of people who are dead and whose bones are embosomed in the earth. For images of every kind are moving everywhere, some formed spontaneously in the air, others emanating from various things and compounded of their different shapes. Certainly the image of a centaur is not derived from a living being, since no such creature ever existed.
So he uses this as a way to explain all those composite beasts that litter not only Greek mythology, but Near Eastern mythology all over the world. Yeah.
And he takes the fun out of everything.
He does. He really is a killjoy here. I don't like it.
How does he know for sure these things never existed?
That's a good question. I wondered about that as well, because if we follow this back through, that these are all just sloughing offs of previous beings, could there be a gossamer part of some centaur still hanging around after thousands of years? He's not.
Could you say that part again?
What? I don't remember what I said. Yeah.
Something like a gossamer part of some centaur hanging around after thousands of years?
Right. So thousands of years ago, there were centaurs, and those atoms are still floating around somewhere. He seems to explain it like, you got some some torso atoms and slamming into a horse atom.
Lower horse atoms.
Lower horse atoms, and they produce this.
Smashed together.
Right.
Like that terrible meme you shared with me of...
What did I do?
What's the best way for a centaur to wear his pants?
Exactly. Did you choose? Did you have a favorite?
Oh, I'm a serious scholar. I can't get involved in...
You don't have time for that nonsense.
No, pants on centaurs.
Right. I believe the correct answer was choice D.
Okay.
Those wanted to see
those who are in the know.
Yeah, right.
So this explains all these crazy creatures.
Yeah.
A little bit sloughs off here, a little bit sloughs off there. They smash together, and it forms an image, an impression, made up of these simulacra, and then they impinge upon our brains.
Somehow. Right.
But if that's true, how can I make up something like that on my own? Am I somehow grasping? I've never tried to combine, here we go, thought experience, elephant and flamingo. I've never tried to do it, but now I can.
Now you can.
There's the pink elephant standing on one leg with a beak. I got it in my mind.
Right. So
how did that happen?
So he would say that you're getting that into your mind means that those atoms have already kind of smashed together.
But how can I access it at will? That's the tricky part.
That's a good question. Yeah. He's so quickly he's so confident he says, I've proven this, to the biggest dullard you've ever met, right? And now let's move on to the next thing, right? A lot of the stuff he doesn't follow through all the way.
So you don't care for that?
I don't. And of course, it's the big flaw, and we've talked about this, is that nothing explains the movement. There's no prime mover. That's just what they do.
And have always done.
Right.
The part that I find ironic, once again, is the attack on the traditional religion of his time is so strong, but it's replaced with a missionary zeal, a fervor that's equally, in fact, you could say it's more devout and zealous than what any of his contemporaries displayed.
Sure. It reminds me of how, even in the modern, the contemporary kind of environmental movement, so much of
going to alienate some people here. Tread lightly on the grass.
I'm not speaking out against environmentalists, but how that theater can present itself with a kind of religious zeal. It's almost kind of a Gaia worship without going as far as to call it Gaia worship.
Yeah.
So, but you're absolutely right. There is a deep irony here. Yeah, he's a prophet.
So how does book 4 end?
So book 4 ends with stuff that we shouldn't get into great detail about on a family-friendly podcast.
No, I think so.
No. So he extends the same theory down to explaining procreation and conception.
So book 4 ends with love advice, right? On how to conceive and procreate. So kids, you may want to skip that part.
Right. So, yeah. Talking about taking the fun out of everything. It's
quite a mechanical description.
It is. It's right. And cringingly so.
Yeah, and now that I mentioned that, all the kids are racing toward the end of book 4 of On the Nature of Things. It's got that off-putting title, though.
Yes.
That would keep
anybody away from
taking that
book off the shelf, right? But let me read from Smith, the translator. He has some notes on that, I thought, which kind of unpack this quite well.
I'd love to hear it.
So, talking about this part in at the end of book 4, he says, Epicurus placed sexual desire in his natural but unnecessary category of desire, which means that those affected by it must proceed with caution. Since its satisfaction brings physical pleasure, albeit a brief one, there is no reason to avoid it, provided that it does not also bring pain. But in practice, it often does bring pain, especially if an emotional entanglement has developed. So the recommendation is either to abstain from it altogether, or if one cannot do without it, to have it on a casual basis so that one gets the physical pleasure but avoids the mental pain.
Again, that's so inhuman.
It is so inhuman. But again, it's a nice corrective to the hedonism that's often associated with Epicurus.
So you're saying it's a corrective to the false conception of Epicurus.
Yes.
Right, I got it.
Yeah.
So people think Epicurus, well, it's all drunkenness and carousing. And in point of fact, his position is quite a bit more moderate. Right. So engage in sexual activity, but you may want to avoid it because eventually you're going to fall in love with a person, and these emotional entanglements bring the wrong kind of pain.
Right. So it's almost like a monk's existence to some degree. It makes me wonder, if Lucretius had a wife, did he have children? What would he have thought of the concept of having children?
I think he references his wife in this passage.
Oh, does he?
In a fairly unflattering way. If I'm remembering.
Really?
Something along the lines of, you can love even a woman that's not very attractive. If you know how to do it properly.
Right. So, and let me tell you, and I will prove it to you. It doesn't matter how slow-witted you are.
Right.
Yeah.
On that note, let's go to the break.
This episode of Ad Nauseam brought to you by Ad Astra Roasters. Ad Astra Roasters is a veteran-owned specialty coffee roaster located in Hillsdale, Michigan. Founded in Kansas in 2018, Ad Astra Roasters takes its name from the Kansas state motto, Ad Astra per aspera, to the stars through adversity. Dave, this morning I ground up and brewed up more of the Whitney blend.
And you loved it.
It's growing on me.
It's good stuff.
Yep. Tenebris is still my favorite.
That's where I had too.
But this one, I think I've 5 days in a row now with a Whitney, and I've really grown to like it.
It's delicious coffee.
It's good stuff. Lots of other things to choose from in the Ad Astra catalog. Check it out. The poetry series is also a really great option for those wanting to read a great poem while drinking even better coffee. So listeners, head to adastraroasters.com and get 10% off when you
No.
15% off.
Yeah.
That's right. Actually, that's even better. 15% off
ante.
when you put in the coupon code ANAA, Ad Nauseam, Ad Astra, at checkout.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is also brought to you by Hackett Publishing. With offices in Cambridge, Massachusetts and Indianapolis, Indiana, Hackett has been bringing high-quality translations and also original language publications to a mass audience for more than 40 years. Jeff, I know you're a great fan of Hackett. Tell our listener about some of the things that you like, please.
I love how accessible the translations are. I love how affordable the translations are. My myth class that I'm teaching this semester, we just cracked open Stanley Lombardo's translation of the Odyssey, which I have used for years. It's got an attractive, beautiful cover with the Earthrise shot from the moon, the ultimate journey, the ultimate Odyssey. Very clever, very attractive, and students, those who are new to Homer, love it.
They cotton to it. Yeah, it's really incredible.
Yep.
I like the fact that, as illustrated by this very episode, they have a broad catalog.
Very broad.
So we're reading from the Englert verse translation of Lucretius, which is an excellent translation, and we're also reading from the Martin Ferguson Smith prose translation of the same work.
That's right.
The same is true in the Iliad, the Odyssey. They've got Plato by different translators. So it's a very broad catalog, and you really have no excuse, right? If you're out there and you're thinking, I want to get more knowledge of the classics, I want to drill down into it, here's your great opportunity to put together a really nice library inexpensively.
That's right. So, go to their website, scroll through the catalog, and you'll see that tons of classical works, but it's across the humanities.
Yeah, modern and contemporary philosophy. They've got Latin American studies. They've got East Asian studies.
Yep.
All kinds of stuff. So what should the listener do if they want to take advantage of Hackett's generosity?
Well, they can go to hackettpublishing.com, Hackett publishing.com, find the text they want, and in the coupon code box, you type in AN2021, and that will get you 20% off any order and also free shipping.
That's an incredible deal.
It is. Check it out. This episode brought to you also by Ratio Coffee. Ratio Coffee, based in Portland, Oregon. Mark Helwig and his team out there, they've done it. They've offered a way for you to brew top quality coffee right in your own home on your kitchen counter with their machines, the Ratio 6 and the Ratio 8. Dave, you've got the Ratio 8. Tell me a couple things that you love about it.
Well, I love the fact that it's so consistent, right? If you have one of the lesser coffee machines, you might get a good cup of coffee now and then, but it's really hit and miss, or I should say hit or miss.
Yeah.
The Ratio is such a consistent machine. It really doesn't allow for a lot of user error. Let's face it, if user error is an option, I'm going to commit some errors.
You and I both, yes.
Yeah, the Ratio is not going to really allow for that very much. You grind the beans, you put them in the cone, you put it on there, not on the hot pad, but the nice, cool, extruded aluminum, beautifully designed place where you set the carafe.
Yeah.
You push the button, you got 3 stages, and it creates such a consistent cup of coffee.
Yeah, very true. I have the Ratio 6. I look forward to it every morning. I love the weight of the carafe.
Right.
I love how that it keeps it warm for hours. Without the scorch pad underneath.
Yes.
I can't say enough about it.
Yeah.
So, Dave, how can our listeners benefit?
Well, I want to say one more thing about it.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Just real quick. And that is, I've owned a lot of coffee machines in the past. And if someone had said, you should buy something like the Ratio 8, I'm a guy that at first really would have balked a little bit at the price. Because, it's not something you can pick up at the dollar store,
no,
right?
Definitely not.
But I have no regrets because, I'm going to use this coffee machine for 15 years minimum. I've probably gone through 6 or 7 of those plastic ones because they just break so easily.
Yes.
This is a high-quality machine.
It is. And listeners, you can get a great deal on the Ratio 6.
That's correct.
Which is the machine I own. If they go to ratiocoffee.com.
Right, RATIO coffee.com.
Put
the coupon code. That's what you're looking for.
Well, I was like, you put the machine in your
grocery basket.
Yes, and you type in ANCO.
ANCO. Ad Nauseam Coffee, and you get 15% off.
Do it. All right, Dave, so as we get back into it, we're going to move into book 5.
Just book 5?
Just book 5. We got a whole other book after
we got a long way to go.
We do. So let's get down to it. You're going to start us off with some hexameters.
I am. This is book 5, lines 49 and following. Here's praise of godlike Epicurus, who's better than Hercules, better than Ceres, etc. Here we go. Haec igitur qui cuncta sube geredex anemoque, explorit dictis non armis nona decebit, hunc hominem numero divam dignarier esse. Cum bene praeser tim multacti venitus ipsis, iam mortalibus e divis dara dicta suerit, atquam nem rerum naturam pondere dictis.
Excellent. Very nice as always.
Thanks. I tripped a little bit over this dignarier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as bad as it sounds in the third line there, but it's an archaic present passive infinitive for those playing the home game.
So Lucretius, he's just showing off.
Dignarier. Come on,
really. Yeah, after I read my lines earlier, I thought, maybe I should challenge Dave to a hexameter throwdown.
Let's do it.
No, because you roll those R's, I would be finished after a line and a half.
Bring your guitar though, and then you.
Oh, exactly.
Strum me under the table.
That's right. We need some sort of kind of rap battle. But let me offer a translation. I believe this is Englert. Again? Yes. Therefore, he who subdued all these things and drove them from the mind with words, not arms, isn't it fitting that this human be deemed worthy of being numbered among the gods? Especially since he was accustomed to write many words well and in a godlike way about the immortal gods themselves, and to lay open the whole nature of things with words.
Reference to the title, right? Omnem rerum naturam there.
Yeah, the really boring title.
Yeah.
A reference nonetheless. Yep. All right, so here's where Lucretius is starting to lose me a little bit. More praise for Epicurus. And in book 6, there's even more praise for Epicurus. And it seems to be, I don't know, it's repeating himself. He seems to be, in my opinion, kind of losing steam at this point.
What do you think is his purpose? Is it to try to make palatable to an unsympathetic audience someone that he thinks has a message really worth hearing? Or is it just praise? Is it just unbridled admiration? He can't control himself.
I don't know. I mean, certainly, I think he wants the listener to be charmed, moved by his devotion to Epicurus and his teaching. And one thing that I jotted down as I was reading this is that what is the point here? Is this just filler at this point? Or is he kind of arguing something along the lines of saying to the listener, "Oh, you want gods? Forget those gods that you've grown up with. If you really need a god, this is your guy." So he's almost kind of taking the concept of God and saying, "Well, let's secularize it. If you want that kind of thing, this is your guy."
Yeah, I think that is probably the best explanation of what Lucretius is doing.
Okay.
For sure. Epicurus is someone who really deserves this kind of title, given everything that we now know about the world, thanks to Epicurus's inquiries and wisdom and scientific investigation. This is the guy that explains everything.
Right.
I wonder if we can find an analog, someone whose explanatory powers, I guess really the leader of any kind of movement, or I don't want to say cult, but any kind of really popular following, people are going to say, that's the person you should really respect, instead of maybe the traditional ideas you've grown up with.
Right. Yeah. It's very un-Socratean. Or, he says, I'm wise in that I know that I know nothing.
I know one thing, I know nothing.
Right. So here I say, no, Epicurus, he's got it all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what about the place for human beings in the world? Where do they fit?
He crams in so much in these last books.
Okay.
And it's almost like he's breathless, like he's running out of time and running out of space. And so we can't scratch the surface here. We're kind of picking and choosing.
And if we did scratch the surface, it would emit simulacra that would then flow out through the entire world and
go up your nose.
Go up your nose and collide with a centaur, most likely.
Right. So one of the things he talks about is again, he's kind of correcting this view that human beings are not a pinnacle of any sort of creation.
Right. They're not at the top of the food pyramid or any kind of structure.
No, they're just another one of these conglomerations of atoms. So again, it's the Smith translation. To assert, moreover, that the gods purposely prepared the world and its wonders for the sake of human beings, that we should therefore praise their admirable handiwork and regard it as eternal and immortal, that it is sinful to use any means at any time to displace what was established by the ancient design of the gods for the perpetual use of the human race, or to assail it by argument and turn it topsy-turvy. To invent these and all other such conceits, Memmius, is preposterous. For what benefit could immortal and blessed beings derive from our gratitude that they should undertake to do anything for our sake?
So this is in direct contrast with what Cicero will develop not too long after this in his work De Natura Deorum, right? On the nature of the gods.
Yeah, another lousy title.
Yeah, not so great.
Yeah.
It's a good Latin title.
Yeah.
But bad English,
yeah,
as you're saying. In any event, one of the phrases that he uses is that the world is created ad fructum hominum deorum. The world is created hominum deorum for the enjoyment of men and gods. So for the specific use, the fructus, it's a good thing for human beings that the world exists, and the gods made it like this because they care for us.
Right.
And Lucretius says,
nope.
No, it's absurd. What benefit could immortal and blessed beings derive from our gratitude? Now, there's a kernel of truth there, right? And he may be reacting against the mercenary, something we've talked about before, the mercenary view that many Romans and Greeks had about their relationship to the gods. They serve the gods give them something.
Right.
But he has ruled out the possibility of just plain old benevolence, right? Maybe the immortals created the world not because they needed our gratitude, but just from kindness. And that doesn't seem to fit into his system at all.
No.
Do you only give things to your children because you want them to like you?
Of course not.
No.
Right.
I mean, sometimes I have base motives like that, right? You give your child something because you really want their gratitude, and you're a little hurt if they don't say thank you. But I mean, it would be a really cruel parent who would only give something to a child
exactly
on that basis.
Right.
And these immortal and blessed beings, are they more cruel than human parents?
Yeah. No, it's a tangled mess. Kind of that transactional view, that do ut des, right?
Right.
I give so that you give.
Correct.
We talked in an earlier episode. Lucretius does talk about the gods, but they're completely removed,
distant,
and uninterested, uninvolved. I always come back to that question: how is this supposed to comfort me as a human being?
Yep.
Right? How is this supposed to dispel my fear and my pain? It doesn't do it for me. But
so no creator, no benevolent gods that want to do anything for us. The gods are just like us, but removed. They have better atoms. I guess that's basically it.
Yeah.
And a naturalist view of, kind of like Darwin, of where human beings came from.
Yeah.
They just arose naturally out of the ground, and lots of atoms crashing around.
Right. Reminds me of the monkeys and the typewriters thing.
Right.
Where give enough monkeys, enough typewriters, enough time, they'll produce Hamlet or something like that. Right. So you get an infinite amount of time and atoms smashing together. Yeah, you're gonna get whatever you see.
Right.
Yeah. So he goes on in this book, covers all kinds of topics. He's, where did civilization come from? What's the origin of fire, tools, animal husbandry, and the form and shape of various elements in nature, celestial bodies, geography, animals. Everything can be explained by this crashing atom theory.
Can he explain spirograph?
I had a spirograph growing up. Did you have a spirograph?
I think we've talked about this on air.
Have we?
I don't know.
I love spirograph.
But can he explain it?
No one can explain the spirograph, right?
Okay.
So one passage I found interesting was talking about the origin of language. And this too, it dovetails with kind of his argument. Human beings aren't so special, so get off your high horse, you humans.
Right. You want to read a little bit of that to us? This is Smith, isn't it?
Yeah, I read the last one. Would you take this one?
Lastly, why is it so very remarkable that human beings, with their power of voice and tongue, should designate things by different sounds according to their different feelings? Even domestic animals and the species of wild beasts, despite their dumbness, regularly utter distinct and different sounds according to whether they are afraid, or in pain, or full of joy. A fact that may be proved by familiar examples. When Molossian mastiffs, roused to anger, start to snarl and fiercely draw back their great pendulous lips to bare their cruel teeth, the menacing noise they make is very different from that when they bark and fill the whole neighborhood with their clamor. So, if animals, despite their dumbness, meaning their inability to speak, are impelled to utter various sounds expressive of various feelings, how much more natural is it that mortals in those early times should have been able to designate different things by different sounds?
So human speech is...
It's like dogs barking.
Dogs barking. It's horses neighing, birds squawking.
Mm-hmm. I think it's pronounced squawking, isn't it?
So I use that term with my kids, squawking.
Squawk?
If there's squawking, it's like an extreme form of...
It's a variation on the
complaining.
theme.
Yes, exactly.
Stop your squawking.
Stop that squawking.
I got it.
Like, you know the difference between wrestling and wrestling?
A little bit.
Okay, so it's that's the finesse that I'm going for there. So we don't need to dwell on it.
No, but speaking of animal sounds, since we're digressing a little bit, I was sitting outside the other day and I heard this flap, 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 whack, whack, whack. It sounded exactly like someone hitting the side of the house with a pancake.
Yes. Really?
Yes. And then I thought, no, that's not possible. It's a neighbor taking a rug and whacking it to get the dust out. I don't know if anybody does that anymore, but people used to beat their rugs.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
And this went on, flap, flap, whack, whack. And eventually my curiosity was aroused and I put my book down. I wandered closer and closer to the sound, and I found out that it was a woodpecker who was drilling a hole in the side of my neighbor's house.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. That strikes the woodpecker would make like a pancake like sound.
It was because it was like he was hitting something that was like a guitar, right? It had this hollow wooden resonance, so it was echoing really loud.
Interesting.
So strange.
So strange.
So now to connect this to Lucretius, is it so surprising that if woodpeckers can, convey their feelings and sounds, their flapjack whacking sounds, that human beings would do it? So we're nothing special.
Nothing special.
Right.
Right. And again, this is comforting how?
I don't know. It's also, frankly, really not very persuasive. I'm prepared to believe that animals express certain kinds of maybe feelings, emotions, instinctual kinds of things. But to me, there seems to be a great chasm between a mastiff being cautious about an intruder and Lucretius writing a poem in hexameters.
Exactly. Yeah.
I read this book by Tom Wolfe a couple of years ago. It's called The Kingdom of Speech. And it's really kind of a takedown of Darwinism, surprising from Tom Wolfe. But he quotes one of Darwin's contemporaries, a man named Alfred Russel Wallace, who apparently is partly responsible for discovering the theory of natural selection. And one of the really interesting quotes in that book is a criticism of Darwin's theory is that the nature of speech is the Rubicon, or human speech is the Rubicon that the beasts will never cross. That's the theory. So Wolfe develops this idea, right, that human speech is so unique. There's nothing like it, and it's impossible to have come from the kinds of origins that Darwin says it did. That's my take on the story and on the book. And agree with it or disagree with it. It seems really to touch exactly on what Lucretius is saying, right? He's saying, animal sounds, human speech, they're on a continuum, so it's really not very surprising. Stop being so proud of being a human being.
Right.
And this book's claim is, no, they're really not on a continuum. They're different in kind, not just different in degree.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's great. I would love to take a look at that book.
Yeah, now, unfortunately, Tom Wolfe is deceased.
Yes.
Else we'd love to have him on the podcast.
That would have been amazing.
If we could swing that, because he's a brilliant writer.
Definitely. Yeah, but like I said, at this point in the poem, Lucretius is moving so quickly and he's jumping from topic to topic that it's almost like the point is to kind of overwhelm his audience rather than to kind of say, oh, yes, I see how that argument is so well reasoned. Right.
Well, let's get into Book 6 and get on the downslope to the end of the series on Lucretius.
Right. And you know how Lucretius starts Book 6? You know what he starts it with?
Oh, I don't know. Could it be praise of Epicurus?
Yes. Yes, he praises his godlike nature of his discoveries. Yes, it's amazing.
Now we can mock because it's fun, but this is a literary trope too. This has Alexandrian precedent. It's not as though Lucretius just invented it. He's following in the line of Callimachus and others. Right. But it's not an especially appealing trope, I guess.
No, I'm allowed to be annoyed by it.
Okay.
Right, exactly. Right. So I don't want to dwell on the particulars of that particular praise because we've looked at several of them by now. But in this book, he turns to explaining meteorological phenomena. He talks about, where does lightning come from? Where does thunder come from? Rid yourselves of these childish notions that a thunderbolt is the thing wielded by Jupiter from Mount Olympus or what have you.
Or what I was taught as a kid, that thunder and lightning is, the saints or the angels are bowling.
I heard that one growing up too. Exactly.
And I believed it.
Did you believe it?
For a while.
Right.
It's charming.
Yeah.
The sound of the pins and the balls crashing. Right? Somebody's bowling.
Bowling up there. They love to bowl up there. So again, we're going to just look at maybe one or two examples from this particular book. But what's really, again, striking is the breadth of his knowledge. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a botanist, he's a meteorologist, he's a weatherman.
Right.
He's a historian.
Right.
He's got his fingers on so many different things. It's astounding.
It is. Yeah. And it's especially interesting because a point we've made many times, this is all delivered in poetry. So serious science in antiquity has to be conducted in verse. Science is not prose. You want to talk about something significant, you need to put it into verse.
Right.
So Plato and Aristotle are kind of outliers in that category.
Yeah.
So does he explain Mount Etna?
I thought this was particularly interesting. So Mount Etna, a large, still very active volcano on the island of Sicily, it gave the ancient Romans all kinds of trouble.
Yeah. Have you seen Etna?
I've never been to Sicily.
No, neither have I.
I would love to see it.
Right.
I've climbed to the top of Vesuvius, another famous still active volcano.
Yep.
But he says, what's going on there? Again, so the old explanation, so it's Vulcan working at his forge.
Right.
He would sneer at that kind of thing. So let me tell you how it really goes.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm just going to read a little bit of this.
This is Smith again, right?
This is Smith, yep. I will now explain why it is that from time to time fiery blasts burst with such tornadic fury from the jaws of Mount Etna. Who among us is astonished if someone contracts a fever whose onset affects the frame with burning heat or develops any other disease that pains the whole body? A foot will suddenly swell. Often a sharp pain tortures the teeth and penetrates right into our eyes. The holy fire breaks out and creeps over the body, inflaming every part it attacks as it crawls across the frame. So I thought this was really interesting. Again, he's saying there's a continuum, not just with speech from animal to human. There's a continuum from volcanoes
right.
to
So the
humans.
natural world and human beings are on the same spectrum.
Right. So
different parts of the spectrum.
Your feet swell up with if you get gout. Isn't that what happens with gout? You something with your foot. Right.
Yeah, you can get gout in a number of different places.
Yeah, but he says if your nose swells up and bursts forth with its nastiness, how is that any different?
So that's Etna.
That's Etna.
The world's blowing its nose.
Exactly. Right. So again, not convinced, but an interesting idea and consistent with his other stuff.
Very consistent.
Right. It also struck me as a very again the Eastern idea. This idea that if you want to kind of understand the self, look to nature, live according to the patterns of nature because they reflect kind of the deepest perfection inside of you. There's that kind of that weird kind of cross-cultural thing happening once again.
Right.
Yeah.
Which could be explained by actual contact.
Right.
Or it could be explained by human beings everywhere have great similarities, so their ideas are going to be expressed in similar ways.
Right.
So as we're wrapping up, we get down now to the Great Plague of Athens.
Yes, which is what his text ends on. Although there's question about missing pieces, right? In the data, we don't have the full text, right?
No.
But this is the surviving text ends with talking about the Plague of Athens.
And this is taken from the historian Thucydides.
Yes.
Of course, Thucydides, who is the chronicler of the Peloponnesian War, right? The great conflict between the Athenians and her allies and Sparta and her allies.
That's right. So, Dave, you want to read a little bit of his passage on the plague there?
Yeah, I do. Maybe here near the end, such was the epidemic. This is the concluding part. You think that's a good place to start?
Yeah.
Such was the epidemic, such was the deadly miasma that once fell on the land of Kekrops, fancy way of saying Athens, making the countryside a scene of death, emptying the streets and draining the city of citizens, for it originated in the heart of Egypt, and after a long journey through the air and over the floating plains, eventually brooded over the whole people of Pandion. Then they were delivered by thousands to disease and death.
So again, there's that kind of proto-germ theory. The bad air is floating up from Egypt and descending upon the people of Athens.
Right.
Yeah.
Fomites.
Fomites.
You familiar with fomites?
No, what's fomites?
Oh, well, it's a Latin word, fomes fomitus. It's a tiny little body. Fomites are those germ bodies, actually. It's another word for a germ body, and that's why we're using all of this, hand sanitizer,
right.
by the 55-gallon drum.
Yeah.
Lucretius anticipated that.
Right. So, again, it's not a punishment from the gods. This can be explained again in these atomic terms.
Right. Materialistic, naturalistic ways.
So I thought it would be kind of a nice way to wrap this up is to, again, from Smith's introduction where he unpacks this a bit, because it is kind of if you read the text, it's kind of jarring. Like, well, why does he end his whole thing here?
It's a little shocking. And if we have any hardcore Epicureans in our listenership, in our audience, which I kind of doubt we do, I think we said last time Stoicism has had quite a renaissance in the 20th century. I don't think that Epicureanism has, but if we have some of those, they might be a little disappointed that we went through these last books so quickly, but go read the book.
Go read the book, yes.
Right.
Take it as an invitation.
Right. Tell us what you think. We might revisit some of these themes later. I don't see it happening anytime soon. Right. But there are still some nuggets in these books that are very interesting.
That's right.
So can you share with us just some of that final quote from Smith as to close out this series?
Yes. So he writes, Lucretius represents the plague not only as a physical calamity, but also as a moral one. The plague-stricken Athenians living before Epicurus's remedies were available were philosophically as well as medically unequipped to deal with this situation of extreme adversity. There's the further point that the Epicureans were fond of representing the unenlightened as diseased or plague-stricken, and there can be little doubt that the condition of the plague's victims symbolizes for Lucretius the moral condition of those ignorant of Epicurean philosophy. So the account of the plague does not reflect the poet's pessimism and despair, which, kind of a straight reading would say, this ends on a really dark note.
Yes.
So Smith's saying, no. Rather, the prospect of salvation and of a heaven on earth which Lucretius offers shines within a brighter and stronger light on the account of his dark and hellish picture of what life is like without the guidance of Epicurus.
Really well said, and I'm sure sound in terms of its scholarship.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make me like Epicurus or Lucretius anymore.
Right. I'm not sure I fully buy Smith's explanation.
Which is that it's not supposed to be pessimistic. All the grim suffering of the plague is supposed to make us like Epicurus more because see what he can save you from.
I think that's what he's saying. Yeah. All right. Okay. So,
well, on that note,
we got to get out of here.
Yeah, that concludes this series, doesn't it? We're going to wrap it up. So we got some things to do, don't we, before we say goodbye here?
We do. I believe you'd like to say something about the Moss method.
I would. I'd like to say that we've had 2 sessions of our Friday office hours, Friday mornings, and we've had people coming in from all over. We've talked together about Homer, about Aeschylus, of course, the Moss text. We spent a good deal of time last week on a passage from Philippians chapter 2, the really interesting first few verses there. So we had about, a dozen people show up each time. And if you sign up for my course, The Moss Method for Greek, Expert, Self-Paced, Accessible, then you get this feature. On Fridays, you can meet up with me, talk about anything, any aspect of Greek you'd like.
Could they talk to you about the podcast?
I suppose, but only if they've listened to it. This is for Greek, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Not everything's about the podcast.
You said anything. You said anything.
I said anything Greek. Come on.
Right.
The omnibus Graekis. That's what we can talk about. So
Gotcha.
If you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you. Go to mossmethod.com. Sign up for one of the modules. I think it's a good value, and then we can see you on Friday during office hours.
Sounds great. So listeners, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. Leave us a review.
Yeah, we'd like that very much.
Yes.
Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like.
Give us ideas for future episodes.
Right.
Drop us a personal note at dave@oddnauseam.com. Don't forget the V. Or jeff@oddnauseam.com. Also, don't forget the V.
We've been receiving some great listener mail. We
wonderful.
Enjoy that.
It's so much fun.
Such a supportive audience.
Dave, what's on tap for next week?
Well, on tap for next week is we're going to do a takedown. This is really exciting. Of the Latin state mottos. So for any of the states in the U.S., if they've got a Latin motto, we're going to take them down.
We're going to take them down. Oh, I'm looking forward. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, we're going to mock the motto of the state of Michigan. I'll tell you that right now. And maybe if we get real creative, suggest some alternatives.
Yes, excellent.
That'll be fun.
Can't wait.
So tune in for that. We also want to say thank you to a number of individuals.
Yep.
First of all, of course, Miss Mishka Fernando, who makes the podcast hopefully just a good listening experience.
Yes.
She's, fiddling with all those knobs, doing all the editing, doing some great work. Thank you, Mishka.
Yes, and also thank you to the wonderful musicians, Ken Tamplin and Scott Vincent, for the great music you hear throughout the show.
Right, and the narrator, Brian DeYoung, the voice of the Ad Nauseam podcast, who, gets us started there.
Right.
All right, so Jeff, you have the gustatory parting shot this week, and this is kind of tenuously connected to the theme of Thanksgiving, isn't it? Like I promised at the beginning?
Yes, now I see what you're talking about right here. So this comes from a text by Janet Clarkson called Pie, A Global History.
Now you say a text?
A text.
This is like a textbook? This is something I could assign in class?
If you're teaching pieology, right? Exactly. This is a primer.
Sounds like my kind of book, frankly.
Absolutely. She writes, there is a type of pie strongly associated with Scotland which has aesthetic and health dangers that justify its inclusion here amongst the sinister pies.
Sinister pies.
There's a whole group of these apparently.
Yeah, well.
Right? It is the fried pie.
You had me at fried.
Which is just what it says, a baked pie cooked a second time by frying.
Oh, it sounds delightful.
Scotland is not called the land of the brave.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.